Marcus Daniels clutched his boarding pass as flight attendant Heather Stevens towered over him, her voice cutting through the cabin. "Sir, we need this seat for another passenger." The first-class cabin fell silent. Marcus, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, had just closed a $120 million deal with SkyWest Airlines, the very airline now demanding he move to economy. As security approached, their hands hovering near their tasers, Marcus's phone buzzed with a notification. The first payment of $25 million had just cleared. With ice in his veins, he pressed, "Transaction reversed." Before we dive into this shocking story of racial discrimination and corporate power, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and holding corporations accountable, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more true stories of courage in the face of prejudice. Marcus Daniels straightened his custom Armani tie as he settled into Seat 2A of SkyWest Airlines Flight 1876. At 42, the Harvard Business School graduate had transformed himself from a South Chicago housing project kid into one of the few black CEOs in America's financial sector. His company, Pinnacle Investments, managed assets worth billions, but today's meeting would be his biggest yet. For months, Marcus had studied SkyWest's financials, identified their weaknesses, and crafted a proposal to inject $120 million that would revolutionize their aging fleet. He'd booked this premium first-class ticket weeks ago, wanting to review his presentation during the 3-hour flight to SkyWest's headquarters. As passengers continued boarding, Marcus pulled out his tablet, scrolling through his meticulously prepared slides one last time. Each graphic told the story of SkyWest's potential future, with Pinnacle's backing. He'd rehearsed his pitch countless times, anticipating every possible question. The flight attendant, Heather Stevens, approached his row. "Boarding pass, sir?" she asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Marcus handed it over. "Good morning." Heather studied it longer than seemed necessary. "And your name is?" "Marcus Daniels." He maintained his professional demeanor, though he noticed the white businessman across the aisle hadn't been questioned. "And you're sure this is your seat?" Her tone carried a hint of skepticism. "Yes, I'm certain." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing the digital confirmation. Heather forced a smile. "Very well, sir." She moved on without offering the pre-flight drink she'd served to other first-class passengers. What Marcus couldn't see was happening in the galley. Bradley Wellington, SkyWest's vice president of operations, had boarded early and pulled Heather aside. "We have a VIP boarding later who'll need accommodation," Bradley had whispered, subtly nodding toward Marcus's seat. "That passenger in 2A, make sure you verify his credentials thoroughly." Bradley Wellington represented old money and older thinking. His family had been in aviation since commercial flights began, and he viewed SkyWest as his birthright. The prospect of a black-owned investment firm gaining influence over his airline made his jaw clench. He'd initially tried blocking the meeting altogether, but the company's desperate need for capital had overruled his objections. Marcus noticed another flight attendant approach his row again. "Excuse me, sir. May I see your boarding pass one more time? System shows some confusion." Marcus maintained his composure, though he'd been flying first class for 15 years, without ever facing such scrutiny. "Certainly," he said, presenting it again. The attendant studied it, then reluctantly nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels." Across the cabin, Bradley smirked as he texted Richard Whitley, his longtime golf buddy. "Delayed but on my way. Got you covered." In the terminal, Richard Whitley fumed at the gate agent. "What do you mean I'm in economy? I always fly first class." "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitley, but today's flight is completely full in first class." Richard's face reddened. "Get Bradley on the phone, now." Marcus observed these interactions while appearing absorbed in his tablet. Growing up on Chicago's South Side had taught him to stay aware of his surroundings. His single mother had worked 3 jobs to keep their apartment, sacrificing everything for his education. "They'll try to make you invisible," she'd always told him. "Don't you ever let them." He'd faced skepticism at every step, from his high school counselor who suggested trade school instead of college applications, to Harvard classmates who assumed he was there on affirmative action despite his perfect SAT scores. to the bank that denied his first business loan despite an impeccable business plan. Each time, Marcus had responded the same way: excellence and persistence. He'd graduated top of his class, built Pinnacle from scratch, earned the respect of Wall Street's most critical players. His company now employed over 200 people, 40% of whom were minorities he'd personally mentored. Today's SkyWest deal would be Pinnacle's largest ever, positioning them as major players in airline financing. The contract was practically signed, just needing the final handshakes at headquarters. Marcus had arranged for the first installment of $25 million to clear immediately after digital signatures, showing SkyWest his commitment. Heather approached again. "Can I get you a beverage before takeoff, sir?" Her tone was noticeably colder than when addressing other passengers. "Water, please," Marcus replied, maintaining professionalism despite the apparent microaggression. When she returned with a plastic cup instead of the glass tumblers other first-class passengers received, Marcus simply thanked her, refusing to be provoked. The cabin filled quickly. Marcus noticed several passengers glancing his way, then quickly averting their eyes. He'd experienced this throughout his career, the subtle questioning of whether he belonged in premium spaces. His phone buzzed with a text from his executive assistant. "SkyWest execs confirmed for 2 p.m. CEO sending car to airport." Marcus smiled. Soon, none of these small indignities would matter. The deal would change everything, not just for Pinnacle, but potentially for an entire industry where diversity remained abysmal. As the final boarding announcement sounded, Marcus noticed Bradley Wellington watching him from the galley, whispering something to Heather while gesturing subtly toward seat 2A. She nodded and approached Marcus once more. "Sir, there seems to be a problem with your seat assignment," she began, her voice carrying just enough for nearby passengers to hear. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He recognized this tactic, creating a public spectacle to force compliance through humiliation. It had happened to him before at restaurants, hotels, and exclusive clubs, but never on a plane bound for a meeting where he was about to become one of the company's largest investors. "There's no problem with my seat assignment," Marcus replied calmly, removing his boarding pass again. "Seat 2A, confirmed weeks ago." Heather's smile thinned. "I'll need to check with my supervisor." As she walked away, Marcus noticed Richard Whitley finally boarding, his face flushed with entitlement as he paused at the galley to speak with Bradley. Both men glanced toward Marcus, not bothering to hide their contempt. In that moment, Marcus knew exactly what was coming. He'd experienced variations of this scene throughout his life. The only difference was the setting. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't lose sight of why he was on this plane. He hadn't fought his way from South Chicago to Harvard, to the boardrooms of Wall Street, to be defeated by such blatant prejudice. Little did Bradley Wellington know, he was about to turn one of Pinnacle's greatest investors into his company's most dangerous adversary. Richard Whitley stormed down the aisle of the first-class cabin, designer briefcase swinging dangerously close to other passengers. His tailored suit couldn't mask the redness of his face as he spotted the last remaining seat, in economy class. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he snarled at Heather. "Do you know who I am?" Heather lowered her voice. "Mr. Whitley, I understand. Mr. Wellington is aware of the situation." "Well, he better fix it," Richard snapped, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I don't fly, coach. Period." Marcus observed the commotion while reviewing his presentation, noting how the flight crew scrambled to placate the irate passenger. He'd seen this behavior countless times, entitlement masquerading as importance. Bradley emerged from the galley, clasping Richard's shoulder. "Slight misunderstanding, Rich. We'll sort it out." He shot a pointed look toward Marcus, then whispered something to Heather. With practiced precision, Heather approached Marcus, her smile professional but cold. "Sir, we have a situation with a VIP passenger who needs this particular seat. We can accommodate you in our economy section with a voucher for future travel." "I booked this seat weeks ago," Marcus replied evenly, "and I need to work during this flight." Heather's smile tightened. "I understand, but we're asking for your cooperation." May I ask why this particular seat is needed when there are other first-class seats available? Marcus gestured to empty 3C. Richard Whitley stepped forward, voice dripping with disdain. Because some of us actually belong in first class. The implication was unmistakable. The cabin fell silent. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. I belong exactly where my boarding pass says I belong, Marcus responded, keeping his voice measured despite the open disrespect. The flight supervisor appeared next to Heather. Is there a problem here? Before Marcus could respond, Richard interjected. Yes, I need my regular seat, and this gentleman is being difficult. I see, the supervisor said, barely glancing at Marcus's boarding pass. Sir, we need to request that you relocate to accommodate our priority passenger. Priority passenger? Marcus raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware airlines still categorize passengers beyond their ticketed class. Bradley stepped forward. Sir, we can make this difficult or simple. Your choice. Marcus recognized the threat behind those words. I'd like to speak with the captain. The captain is preparing for takeoff, the supervisor replied curtly. This is a security matter now. Security? Marcus kept his voice level. How exactly is my sitting in the seat I purchased a security issue? As if on cue, 2 security officers appeared at the front of the cabin. Their hands rested casually near their tasers, a detail not lost on Marcus. Final call, sir, Bradley said with thinly veiled satisfaction. Move voluntarily or we'll have you removed. Marcus weighed his options. He could stand his ground and likely be forcibly removed, possibly arrested on manufactured charges of interfering with flight crew, a federal offense that could derail the entire deal. Or he could swallow this injustice and live to fight another. With decades of experience navigating such moments, Marcus made his choice. I'll relocate under protest, he said, gathering his briefcase. And I'll need your names and employee IDs. Just be grateful we're still letting you fly, Richard muttered, already settling into the contested seat. As Marcus stood, he noticed several passengers recording with their phones. The humiliation was being documented in real time. One of the security officers stepped closer, hand still near his taser. Let's move along, sir. With dignity intact but pride wounded, Marcus walked through the first-class cabin toward economy. As he passed Bradley, their eyes met briefly. In that moment, Marcus saw not just prejudice, but fear. Fear of changing power structures. Fear of diversity in spaces long reserved for people who looked like Bradley. Has something like this ever happened to you or someone you know? Comment number 1. If you believe what they did to Marcus was blatant discrimination, hit that like button. If you think companies should be held accountable for how they treat all customers, subscribe to see how Marcus turns the tables on SkyWest Airlines. What would you do if you were Marcus? Stay calm and plan your revenge, or make a scene right there on the plane. The airline has no idea who they're messing with. But what will Marcus do next with $120 million hanging in the balance? Marcus Daniels navigated the narrow economy class aisle, acutely aware of every eye on him. Whispers followed his progress. What did he do? Was he threatening someone? They never remove people from first class. The walk felt interminable. Each step reinforced the message Bradley Wellington had sent. No matter his accomplishments, his wealth, or his influence, Marcus would always be seen as someone who didn't belong in certain spaces. He finally reached row 34, where a middle seat awaited between 2 already seated passengers. Both looked up with visible discomfort as the flight attendant pointed to his new assignment. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, squeezing past the passenger in the aisle seat, a heavy-set man who made minimal effort to move. Once seated, Marcus found himself wedged between the man and a woman who immediately pressed herself against the window, creating as much distance as possible. His knees pressed painfully against the seat in front, his elbows forced against his sides. From first class to this. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. He reached for the overhead air vent, only to find it broken. The cabin temperature already felt 10 degrees warmer than first class. Marcus loosened his tie slightly, refusing to show his discomfort. A different flight attendant passed by, studiously avoiding eye contact. When Marcus pressed the call button 20 minutes later, "No," one responded. "They're usually pretty slow back here," the man beside him commented, not unkindly. Marcus nodded, then attempted to extract his tablet from his briefcase. The confined space made even this simple task nearly impossible. When he finally succeeded, he discovered the in-flight Wi-Fi signal was significantly weaker in economy. Too weak to download the latest market figures he needed for his presentation. Halfway through the flight, Marcus asked for water. The flight attendant returned with a half-filled plastic cup, sloshing some onto his tablet before hurrying away without apology. As Marcus dabbed at his device with a napkin, a notification appeared on his phone. "Luggage alert, itinerary change detected." He tapped the notification, revealing that his checked bag, containing his backup presentation materials, contract copies, and change of clothes for the meeting, had been rerouted to Minneapolis. No explanation provided. This was no coincidence. Bradley Wellington was sending a message, or rather, a warning. Marcus took a slow breath, remembering his mother's words. "When they go low, you document everything." Discreetly, he began recording voice memos on his phone, noting times, names, and specific actions. He'd learned long ago that in America, justice often required evidence, especially for someone who looked like him. As he documented the events, Marcus noticed a passenger across the aisle surreptitiously recording video. Their eyes met briefly, and the passenger gave an almost imperceptible nod of solidarity. The beverage service came and went. Every passenger around Marcus received a full can of soda or juice. He received another half-filled cup of water. "Excuse me," Marcus called as the attendant started to move away. "Could I please have the rest of the water?" The flight attendant turned back with visible annoyance. "This is all we have available for now, sir." The man beside Marcus frowned. "You just gave that gentleman a full can of Coke," he pointed out, gesturing to another passenger. "I can come back later if we have extra," the attendant replied curtly, before moving on. An hour into the flight, Marcus overheard a conversation between two flight attendants in the nearby galley. Wellington said to make sure he doesn't get comfortable. One whispered, "I don't get it. Why's Bradley so worked up over this guy? Apparently he's some hotshot investor. Bradley says he's trying to take over the airline." "That guy? You're kidding." Wellington and Whitley go way back, country club buddies. Whitley always gets the royal treatment. Marcus recorded this exchange too, the pieces falling into place. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about power, territory, and a deep-seated fear of change. He checked his phone again and noticed something unexpected. The video of his removal from first class had already been uploaded to social media. The hashtag, #Black CEO removed, was trending, with thousands of shares in just 30 minutes. One post read, "Disgusting treatment of black executive on our Sky West Air. Removed from first class to make room for white passenger. Black CEO removed." Another showed, "He had the boarding pass for that seat. Security called because he checks notes sat in the seat he paid for. Black CEO removed." The comments were flooding in by the minute. Some passengers on the very same flight were posting their own angles of the incident. Marcus watched with mixed emotions as his humiliation became a viral moment. On one hand, the public exposure might force accountability. On the other, he'd spent his entire career avoiding being reduced to nothing more than his race. He'd wanted to be known for his investment acumen, his business strategies, his mentorship, not as a victim of discrimination, but as his mother had always said, "Sometimes the spotlight finds you for reasons you didn't choose. What matters is what you do when it does." His phone buzzed with messages from Pinnacle's executive team, who'd already seen the videos. "Are you okay? Do you need legal intervention? Should we cancel the SkyWest meeting?" Marcus replied simply, "Proceeding as planned. We'll explain later." He glanced toward the front of the plane, where Bradley Wellington was visible, laughing with Richard. Whitley over champagne. They had no idea that their actions had just been broadcast to millions. The plane began its descent. Marcus prepared himself mentally for the meeting ahead. He would need to compartmentalize this humiliation, present himself as the consummate professional, despite arriving without his materials, in a wrinkled suit, and with the entire internet discussing his public degradation. Yet beneath his composed exterior, something had shifted. Marcus had built his career on strategic investments, on identifying opportunities where others saw only obstacles, and Bradley Wellington had just made a catastrophic investment mistake. He'd assumed Marcus's dignity was a price worth paying for Whitley's comfort. By the time the plane touched down, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. Sky West's social media team was frantically posting a generic apology about investigating the incident. But it was too late. The damage was already spiraling beyond their control. As the seatbelt sign turned off, Marcus remained seated, allowing the rush of passengers to subside. He didn't want to squeeze past anyone else today. He'd had enough of making himself smaller to accommodate others. The sleek SkyWest corporate headquarters rose 38 stories above downtown, its glass facade reflecting clouds and blue sky, a building designed to embody flight itself. Marcus Daniels emerged from his rideshare, straightening his suit, jacket. Despite the flight's indignities, he'd managed to freshen up in the airport restroom, maintaining the impeccable appearance that had become part of his professional armor. 2 security guards stood at the lobby entrance, their eyes tracking Marcus as he approached. He'd anticipated this moment, prepared for it with the same thoroughness he brought to every aspect of his career. "Good afternoon," Marcus greeted them confidently. "I have a 2 o'clock meeting with the executive team." The guards exchanged glances. "Name?" one asked, skepticism evident. "Marcus Daniels, CEO of Pinnacle Investments." The guard examined his tablet, then looked up with narrowed eyes. "There's a Mr. Daniels expected, but..." He hesitated. Marcus understood the unspoken words, "but not someone who looks like you." "I can provide identification," Marcus offered calmly, retrieving his driver's license and business card. The guard studied both, comparing the license photo to Marcus's face with unnecessary scrutiny. "Wait here, please." He stepped away to make a call. Marcus maintained his composed stance, aware of the second guard watching him closely, hand resting near his weapon. This scene had played out countless times throughout his career, the presumption of not belonging, of being an imposter. In the polished marble floor, Marcus caught his reflection. A successful black man in a tailored suit, whose Harvard degree, billions in managed assets, and corner office on Wall Street still couldn't guarantee he'd be treated with basic dignity. The first guard returned, his expression tense. "Sir, there seems to be some confusion. The Marcus Daniels we're expecting is the CEO handling the major investment." "Yes, that's correct. I am that Marcus Daniels." "I'll need to escalate this," the guard replied, lifting his radio again. A receptionist approached, her smile tight. "Sir, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. The Marcus Daniels we're expecting is a Harvard MBA with 20 years in investment banking, currently CEO of Pinnacle Investments, here to finalize a $120 million deal with SkyWest Airlines." Marcus completed her sentence, his voice level but firm. "That Marcus Daniels is standing right in front of you." The receptionist's smile faltered. "One moment, please." She retreated to her desk and made a call, speaking in hushed tones while repeatedly glancing toward Marcus. 3 minutes passed, then 5. Other visitors entered, were verified, and proceeded to elevators without delay. Marcus remained in the lobby, the subject of curious stares and whispers. Finally, the receptionist returned with the security supervisor. "Mr. Daniels, we've been unable to verify your appointment. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Marcus took a measured breath. "Please call Walter Kingston, SkyWest's CEO. Tell him Marcus Daniels is in the lobby." "Sir, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll need to contact the authorities," the supervisor warned. "By all means," Marcus replied. "Please do call them. I'd be happy to explain how SkyWest is blocking their largest potential investor from a meeting confirmed weeks ago." The receptionist's eyes widened at his calm confidence. She whispered something to the supervisor, who reluctantly made another call. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, revealing Walter Kingston himself, SkyWest's silver-haired CEO, flanked by 2 board members. His face showed confusion, then recognition, followed by horrified understanding as he connected the dots between the viral video he'd likely just been briefed about and the man standing in his lobby. "Mr. Daniels," Kingston hurried forward, hand extended. "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. We've been expecting you." Behind Kingston, Bradley Wellington emerged from the same elevator, his face paling as he recognized Marcus. Bradley quickly composed himself, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marcus Daniels," Bradley stepped forward. "What an unexpected situation. We received word of some disturbance on your flight, but never imagined." "No disturbance at all," Marcus replied smoothly. "Just an interesting seating reassignment. I'm sure the millions of people who've viewed the video online would be fascinated by your perspective on it." Kingston's head snapped toward Bradley, alarm evident. "Video? What video?" Marcus retrieved his phone, displaying the trending hashtag and view count, now approaching 5 million. Kingston's complexion turned ashen. "Perhaps we should proceed to our meeting," Kingston suggested, gesturing toward the elevator. "We have a conference room prepared." The executive suite on the 38th floor offered panoramic views of the city. Kingston led Marcus to a plush boardroom where the entire executive team waited, along with their legal counsel. Nervous, glances bounced around the table as Marcus took his seat. "Before we begin," Kingston started, "I want to personally address what happened on your flight. It appears there was a serious breakdown in our customer service protocols." Bradley interjected smoothly. "A terrible misunderstanding. The flight attendant misinterpreted standard procedures for accommodating passengers with special needs." "Special needs?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The passenger who took my seat appeared perfectly able-bodied. In fact, he seemed particularly nimble when reaching for the champagne you served him, Mr. Wellington." Bradley's confident facade cracked. "Slightly. You misunderstood. Richard Whitley is a long-standing platinum member with claustrophobia. We were simply discriminating based on race," Marcus completed calmly. "But that's not why I'm here today." Kingston seized the opportunity to redirect. "Exactly. We're here to finalize our partnership. Your team at Pinnacle has put together an impressive proposal, and we're eager to move forward with the $120 million capital injection." The meeting proceeded with presentations from SkyWest's CFO, detailing how Marcus's investment would transform their aging fleet, expand routes, and stabilize their rocky finances. Throughout, Marcus remained engaged and professional, asking incisive questions that demonstrated his deep understanding of their business. By the meeting's end, digital signatures had been applied to the preliminary agreement. Marcus would provide the initial $25 million immediately, with the remaining $95 million to follow upon finalization of terms. Kingston beamed as he shook Marcus's hand. "This marks a turning point for SkyWest. We're thrilled to welcome Pinnacle as our newest investment partner." Marcus smiled. "Before I leave, there's something I should mention." The room fell silent. "The passenger you removed from first class today to accommodate Mr. Whitley? That was me." Kingston's smile collapsed. The legal counsel visibly flinched. Several executives exchanged alarmed glances. "I was on SkyWest Flight 1876 this morning, seated in 2A, a seat I had reserved weeks ago. I was forcibly relocated to make room for Richard Whitley, apparently on Mr. Wellington's instructions." All eyes turned to Bradley, who struggled to maintain composure. That's a gross mischaracterization. The flight attendant made an independent decision based on what exactly? Marcus asked quietly. "My appearance? Because the flight attendants were quite clear about receiving your specific instructions." Bradley's face reddened. "That's absolutely false. This is clearly an attempt to leverage a minor customer service issue for financial advantage." Marcus turned to Kingston. "The video has now been viewed 8 million times. Your company's stock has dropped 4% since market open. Would you still characterize this as minor?" Kingston glared at Bradley before addressing Marcus. "Mr. Daniels, I assure you this incident does not reflect SkyWest's values. We will conduct a thorough investigation. I'm glad to hear that, Marcus replied, rising from his seat. Because before the remaining $95 million changes hands, I'll need to see concrete evidence that SkyWest takes discrimination seriously. As Marcus turned to leave, Bradley called after him. This is unprofessional. You're mixing personal grievances with business. Marcus paused at the door.